from the BBC World Service in association with ABC and Akashvani. This is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Nikesh Rughani for the BBC. I've spent the last few weeks busy commentating on the T20 World Cup, watching a little bit of rain actually across some of the games. Hasn't been too much fun, but it looks like the sun is shining and we're into the Super 8 stage and it's very exciting indeed.
Hello, Jim Maxwell back here for the ABC from Sydney and looking forward to the finals of this World Cup and listening and watching from afar. Australia might win again. We'll see. Anyway, we're close with England, South Africa, West Indies and India. Yes, that other team, India. They might be a show of getting into the final too.
Yeah, well, I'm Sunil Gupta for Akashvani in India, in New Delhi. And you're absolutely right. The Super 8s are on, and India obviously stand a very big chance of getting through to the semi-finals. They're one of my picks. But there are a couple of other things happening. India are 2-0 up against South Africa women with Smriti Mandhana scoring 2 centuries on the trot. But the other big news is that Gautam Gambhir and W.V. Raman could both be signed on as complementary coaches because Raman has more actual coaching experience for the Indian national team. That's the latest news that came out today in the newspapers. So it's still wait and watch till after the World Cup, and then we shall know who's going to be in charge of the Indian national team.
Well, hello, Jim. Hello, Sunil. We'll save the predictions for a little bit later on in the show for the T20 World Cup. We will continue with that. But also on this week's show, we'll chat to Scotland's head of performance, Steve Snell, about their ICC T20 World Cup campaign as they came agonisingly close to reaching the Super 8s. That stage of the tournament is now underway and taking place in the West Indies as the US leg of the tournament is over. And 2 tasty-looking groups, actually. Group 1 involves India, Australia, Afghanistan and Bangladesh. Group 2 is USA, England, South Africa and West Indies. I think it's safe to say, guys, that nobody really expected the USA, the co-hosts, to make the Super 8s, but fantastic journey for them to be able to get there, making their World Cup debut as an associate nation. The USA, of course, beat Canada and that giant killing against Pakistan to get this far. It also means that they've qualified automatically for the 2026 World Cup, which is going to be held in India and Sri Lanka. Jim, how great a story is this for USA cricket?
Well, it's probably a greater story outside the United States than in it, because I'm not sure whether many of those who are fastened onto basketball, baseball and American football really have any idea of what cricket's about. Maybe this experience is going to draw them to the game a little bit more, with the chance of cricket also at the Olympics in 2028. But I did watch, for historical reasons mainly, Canada playing the United States, just to see if the US could avenge the 1844 loss. So that was a fabulous game. And this bloke Jones, he could belt the ball. And that's what I liked about the United States. They weren't intimidated by anyone they played against. They may have got out to a few mug shots here and there in some of the games and didn't have the experience of the better teams. But they've made a play. And I think it's been fantastic for the future of this format with 20 teams, if that's the way they're going to go, that one of the minnows, as it were, has put their hand up and has got to the next stage. So I'm very excited about what they've done. But as I say, I think it's probably going to have more impact in the rest of the world than in their own country.
Yeah, I mean, look, I suppose the one way that they can get more people at least aware of the fact that there is a USA team playing in the World Cup at the moment is by winning some more games and making some more, headline space on sports networks out there on television and things like that. So we'll wait and see on that. But Sunil, Canada and Uganda were also making their World Cup debuts, and both teams picked up a win in the group stages. Canada beating Ireland, Uganda beating Papua New Guinea. They dragged that one out, but, first win, they got over the line, didn't they?
Oh, yes, they did. At the end of the day, that's what, we want. We want these smaller nations to come forward. We really want to make this a global tournament. When you say the World T20, the World ODI, you really want to make it the world. And I think what Jim was saying about the US was absolutely right. Of course, I've said this before and I'll say it again. India and Pakistan could field 2 teams. That's why they were all mostly expats in those teams. And in fact, taking off again from what Jim said, I think it was the New York Times that said India beat USA 119 to 113, almost like a basketball score. So I think that's the thing that you've got to get over. But you're right. The moment that you get teams like Canada beating Ireland, now Ireland is a test-playing nation, and you're beating Ireland in the T20 World Cup. Of course, it's not the same thing. And Uganda, and we were talking about Uganda in the previous show, beating Papua New Guinea. I think this is really what brings the world to the global stage. And I mean that really, it's not tautological. It's just the fact that you need to have nations from every corner of the world actually coming and participating. The Netherlands were a bit of a disappointment in this particular tournament, but nevertheless, when we see teams like Uganda and Canada coming to the fore, winning, and the US, as I said, make it to the Super 8s, I think it's a great, great scene and a great story for international cricket.
Now, one of the best performing associate nations at the T20 World Cup was Scotland, as they won 2 matches and went agonisingly close to reaching the Super 8s. In their first match against England, Scotland reached 90 without loss after 10 overs before rain ended that match. They then picked up wins against Oman and Namibia. In their final match against Australia, they came so close, but Australia eventually won to send them home and England through. Well, joining us now on Stumped to talk about the ups and downs of their World Cup journey is their head of performance, Steve Snell. Steve, welcome to Stumped.
Hi there. Good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be on.
Well, great to have you here, Steve. Firstly, I want to begin by asking you, how would you reflect on the tournament as a whole?
Really happy with our performances across the tournament. I thought the players played absolutely superbly. We played a brand of cricket where we tried to ensure that we wanted to lay a glove on our 4-member opponents and really make an impression on the tournament. And I thought we played a really attractive and exciting brand of cricket. But equally, we left at the group stages and didn't progress. So from a performance perspective, really positive. From a results perspective, I think the old adage of looking in the scorebook, obviously we're delighted to beat Oman and Namibia, but still disappointed in a sense not to beat England and Australia. And certainly that first game in Barbados, we thought we were in with a real sniff. The pitch wasn't fantastic. So to not have that kind of excitement of that run chase for England was actually really disappointing, not just for our tournament prospects, but for the exciting game as a whole, perhaps.
Yeah, look, a lot of people suggesting that wouldn't have been an easy chase for England. 109, the revised target from 10 overs, would have been a very interesting one indeed. Look, there have been plenty of highlights, as you mentioned, through the tournament, those couple of wins that you did pick up. I mean, I was commentating for the BBC on the Australia game, and, I felt there were some moments in there where the Scotland side really showed how much they belong on that big stage. They won some big moments in that game. They were, favourites for quite a long stretch until Australia, in that run chase in the last 5 overs or so, just started to take the game away from Scotland. Was that one of the highlights for you in this tournament? If not, talk about some other highlights, maybe some other moments that you can help build for the future with.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think there's plenty of moments we're really happy with. I think, that first game against England and not losing a wicket against the pace of Wood and Archer and the emotion of Jofra playing in Barbados with for the first time for England. There was kind of lots of reasons for England to be up and about, and for us to kind of quash that and take all the nerves away. I think that gave the players a lot of confidence and a lot of belief, having played so smartly and effectively the first game. I think if we go then right back to the end of the tournament for us, the getting the rate up, I think the Australians were up to 13 and over with Stoinis in, and then that was really the first time I thought, we're going to win here and we're going to qualify. And then just the quality and the power and the depth of Australia just really kind of shone through. And I think certainly for looking at the depth of talent, where players coming in at 6, 7, 8, can clear the ropes as effortlessly as Australia did, just showed really the kind of the gulf in opportunities for players. A lot of those Australian team have been at the IPL, played a lot of T20 cricket, Whereas the reality is most of our players haven't had that exposure. And I think that showed in that last game. But I think it was really promising for our perspective that we played off the front foot against Australia. I think speaking to the coaches before the game, my kind of one real measurable was that I wanted us to put on a performance. I wanted us to compete. I wanted us to try and win the game rather than just to try and stay in the game. And I think from that aspect, I thought that was really, really positive. And I think sometimes it's very difficult then to measure against the depth and the quality of some seasoned international cricketers that have been playing at the world stage, for a number of years. So in that sense, multiple moments of positivity, but again, highlights the golf and opportunities that some international cricketers are getting and some aren't.
Yeah, hi, Steve. This is Sunil Gupta for Akashvani. I'm in New Delhi, and I watched that game. And first of all, congratulations for the type of cricket you played. But earlier in the show and also in earlier shows, we spoke about the associate nations, the smaller nations, deserving more, quote-unquote, respect. Do you think that this expanded tournament will help with perceptions of the associate nations actually being on the same table as the Big Eight or the test-playing nations as well?
I think, firstly, it is a really positive step that it was a truly global tournament. We'd obviously seen it in football for a number of years. You have your multi-country tournaments, and there's always some really good shocks, which are exciting. The jeopardy of tournaments, I think, are what draws people in. I think I probably can't comment on the perception of others on associate cricket. I'd rather kind of talk about the actions in terms of, as a consequence, what happens in terms of, for example, future tour programs for the ICC. Actually, I'd love to see the action that there is actually more designated windows where associate teams play 4 members. For me, that would reaffirm positive perception amid action and actually something that is tangible. I think a lot of the things that we're talking about here with I'm really pleased that we are is about kind of the respect that associate cricket is earning. It would be fantastic for it to be furthered actually with some action in terms of some more cricket against 4 member nations. And as such, we've recently announced a 3-match series against Australia. Australia contacted us, which I think is, again, a good sign in that regard. So the more mini-series and opportunities we can have to play 4 members, I think that's really important. To come back to your question, I think some of the associate nations did themselves a hell of a lot of credit. I really enjoyed watching Nepal, not just the kind of passion and fever, which is obviously happening for cricket in the country, but the quality and endeavour and kind of some of the moments they had was fantastic to watch. And so from an associate viewpoint, I thought they were absolutely outstanding and I guess certainly on a par in terms of ourselves as some of the moments of the tournament.
I don't really see cricket as a particularly Scottish game. I think about football. So but Scottish fans embraced cricket a little bit more perhaps after this experience?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of exciting things happening in Scottish cricket. Our women's team qualified for the World Cup for the first time. I was out there in Abu Dhabi with our team, and we beat Ireland in the semi-final to qualify for the World Cup in Bangladesh, and that created a huge ripple across Scottish cricket and a lot of really interested parties, which was fantastic to see. And I think that's certainly been furthered by the World Cup escapades and the coverage that we've been receiving, really positive coverage. And I guess, I'm quite new to Scottish cricket myself. I've been in post as head of performance since December, so I'm still finding my way in the territory a little bit. But, what I'm hearing is, real engagement and interest in a 4-member coming to players in a 3-match series. So I'd like to think the kind of the romance in me says that, more people are interested and engaged and I want to come and buy tickets. And I guess, from a participation perspective, there's loads of people playing cricket in Scotland, loads of club cricket happening, loads of matches taking place across pathway, women and girls, and men's cricket. So, I see probably a greater depth of interest than potentially the perception. Naturally, there's a lot of rugby and football, which is talked about in Scotland, but I think that cricket is emerging and showing that it's a real force. And I think there's some really good work going on behind the scenes at Cricket Scotland to encourage that.
Well, that was Steve Snell, the head of performance for Cricket Scotland. Finally, on Stumped, we're going to talk about artificial intelligence. Here in England, sports teams have been using AI to help with team selection in rugby and football, and now it's being used in cricket. England women's head coach John Lewis first came across it when working in the Women's Premier League with the UP Warriors, where they used simulators to look at matchups. Lewis has since used it to help with team selection for the Ashes and that recent series against Pakistan. We have spoken about technology before in regards to DRS, but this is a completely different way to do it. Jim, Sunil, do you think coaches should be using all the tools at their disposal, or is this taking it just a little bit too far?
Well, I was thinking about this, coming from an advertising and marketing background. And what's actually happened in let's say, the last 10, 15 years is that sports is a business. Obviously, artificial intelligence, because of the name, it's artificial. Right? It does not have what we call the ability to think. What you feed in is the type of output that you're going to get, and that needs human intervention. So I think that there is a limit to it. Yes, you can do modeling, you can do all that sort of thing, but then you cannot predict a drop catch, right? So somebody who's going to be out in zero goes on to score 333 or whatever it is, you cannot predict that. But yes, obviously, if technology is there, like it's been used for DRS and other things, Hawkeye, Snicko, all that, if it's there, it's going to be used. I think that's right, because it will make team selection better. It will help prevent workloads and injuries that, you're looking at different people, looking at different body types and saying, he's played enough, he doesn't need to go through. We've seen so many injuries taking place. So yes, I think using it well without letting it vampire the human element, I think, yes, they're absolutely right to use it.
But Jim, looking at matchups and team selection and things like that, look, sport is so much about human emotion, isn't it? And reacting to what is in front of you. Computer can't necessarily do that. Is there a philosophical debate to be had here as well about taking that human emotion out of the game?
This technology application of data, talking about injuries, all sorts of things you can anticipate perhaps in preparation of a team to play. But can you anticipate a catch being taken or dropped? I mean, there are so many elements in the game of cricket that are not controlled. But it's clearly going to be a part of the preparation. And it'll be very interesting to see whether or not it does have an impact. But let's get with the analytics, whatever you want to call it, and use what we can. But I still think we're going to have the feeling when we watch a game of cricket between two well-matched sides that there's some spontaneity, there's some surprise that comes with a game that you've got no way of predicting from the outset. So if that's the case, we may as well just have robots running around on the field instead of human beings, because it's the human side, as Sunil has said, the emotion that goes into it, as well as the physical attributes of the players that make it worthwhile.
Well, that's all we've got time for on this week's Stumped. My thanks to Jim Maxwell, Sunil Gupta, and to all of you for listening. Goodbye.